Good afternoon, and welcome to BlackUSA.News. We have with us Brother Louis Ali from the South. Top of the day to you.
Peace and blessings, Brother Donnie. Thank you so much for having us on this afternoon. I've been excited for weeks now.
Now, Brother Louis, where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but my grandfather was a civil rights activist by the name of Lewis Allen, and he was murdered in 1964 in a little town called Liberty, Mississippi. And so the family migrated to Wisconsin, and I was the first boy born in our family after his murder. So my name is Lewis Allen. But we wind up moving back down south when I was about 9 years old, and I just loved the South. And of course, I joined the nation, so I became Louis Ali from the South.
So one of my mentors, I should say, is Brother Richard Muhammad, the editor-in-chief of Final Call.
The great Brother Richard.
Let me first say salamu alaikum to you and to the family. It's always a pleasure. Brother Richard, who's from Baltimore, has been just a blessing to me throughout my life, at least my career as a journalist. And to go from Baltimore, I think at one point he wrote for the Baltimore Sun, and to Chicago, the home of media besides New York.
That's
and
right.
To still know him. A few years back, he got me a gig out at the National Newspaper Publishers Association convention. This was in Portland. I got a chance to meet Willie Brown and a lot of the black newspaper publishers, Ben Chavis Muhammad, who is in charge of the NNPA.
Sure is.
National Newspaper Publishers Association. Yeah. Just trying to think so many, but meeting Willie Brown was just an awesome. But before we get too far, let me also say, when I go and Google Black Wall Street, Stonecrest, I find you.
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. And it's because of people like you and Brother Richard that are giants, because it really doesn't matter what we do in Black America if you don't have courageous Black media to amplify and highlight what you do. Nobody will know about it. And so I take this very serious, activism, because I've been an activist now for 30 years, and my grandfather was an activist. But the good work that a lot of Black men in particular, but Black people in general do, is not recorded and highlighted, because you don't have people like you and the Final Call and other Black publications that have enough courage to write about it, to talk about it, so that you can make the idea or the thought contagious. And see, good ideas spread just as good as the coronavirus. Everybody's talking about corona and how it can spread. But good ideas and good news, and especially the victories, Brother Donnie, they can spread also. Too often we highlight the lowest points in our community. And the higher points we don't highlight unless the white media, the old guard media, sanctions it. So, man, I love what you do. I have so much respect for Black media, but for you in particular, because you got some Black media outlets to just parrot the old narrative. But what you're doing is really revolutionary. And I think that when the story is really told, and it's going to be told, that Brother Donnie, your name, and Brother Richard, and the minister, and so many truth tellers will be at the top of our mountain.
But you are no rookie. I mean, you have been able to build the Brother Louis Ali media empire as well now.
Well, I'm the president of the Hot Black Coffee Party think tank, and also the Resurrect Black Wall Street movement. And what I see in my vision and thought of integration is to bring the political activists, the economic activists, and the social activists all together as one force. And that's really what you have in the new Black Wall Street market. It's not a religious movement. It's a movement that's designed to touch and bring all of those elements together so that we can have some Black empowerment. To get into our topic a little bit today, Brother Donnie, you can't have Black empowerment without having a political arm, a economic arm, and a social arm that's under the banner of a spiritual arm, not a religious arm. There is a difference. And so when you go to, and this is what I really got out of the Million Man March. The Million Man March wasn't a Muslim march. The theme was atonement, recognition, and responsibility. And the minister didn't put all of the heat on the government. He put the heat on us as men to be the first ones to go back and reclaim our own identity, our own community, our own women, our own children, and to pick up the mantle of responsibility, which has nothing to do with your religious persuasion, you see. And I love the minister for his vision and what he done for all of us, not just the so-called little quote unquote nation of Islam, but for the totality of Black American, really for humanity when we grow up and understand what he's really trying to do. It is the same for Mr. Bill Allen and the new Black Wall Street market. It's supposed to be like Mecca, something that we can circumvent around and draw power. And we got a saying down south, you can't be a bee without a beehive. And so all the busy businesses and bees.
I might have to write that down. I'm going to steal that from you off the break. I'm letting you know. I took all good
coming under
like
the roof, picking up on each other's traffic count. See, if you have over 100 Black businesses in one area, one destination, one location, then all of the busy bees are bringing in nectar or people so that we can have a healing for our community. We had Black business districts 50 years ago. And according to the not Louisiana, but the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, at that time, the fastest growing economy, not just in America, Brother Donnie, in the world was the Black American economy. White children were coming down to the Black business district. We had what was called the old Chitlin circuit, but quiet as it's kept, we own the buildings. We control the entertainment. We had the Negro Baseball League. Historically, Black colleges were at an all-time high, and there were business districts around all of the historically Black colleges. They met in Berkeley and at Stanford and concocted the idea of a social engineering idea of what we classify today as integration. It had nothing to do with really integrating Black people, but it was to get our resources, our money, our talented people, and bring our talented people, our Black entertainers, our Black thinkers and intellectuals over to the white side of town so that they could reaffirm white children and white people and stop their business districts and their economy from dying. And it has worked for the past 50 years because, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, he said integration was a hypocritical trick. About 5 years ago, myself, Dr. Ava Muhammad, Dr. Ridgely Muhammad, and they were under the authority of Minister Farrakhan and other social activists like the Irritated Genie, Dr. Wesley, Umar Johnson, just social activists in general. We started traveling around the country, raising the question, how has integration affected Black businesses? Did it get us more business or less business? And that's how the social engineering component of our movement took off. Then we raised the question, should Blacks consider separation? And Minister Farrakhan instructed Ava Muhammad to say Blacks must consider separation. And then Corona hit, but we were traveling city to city. And now here we are with the Resurrect Black Wall Street movement. I've been to Birmingham, Alabama. I've been to Jackson, Mississippi. I've gone to Lafayette, Louisiana, and different parts of the country to talk about rebuilding the Black business district with we start out around these historically Black colleges so that we can give our young people something to do, something to look forward to. And then lo and behold, 100 years after the burning of Black Wall Street, Stonecrest, Georgia, 125,000 square feet, old Target building, completely refurbished. And now we have our first new Black Wall Street market. But I promise you, Brother Donnie, it won't be the last, and Black people are on the rise. And I'm just so grateful that you highlighted it so people can know what's going on in Black America. That's good.
10 years ago, and I had no idea that would coincide with the 100th. But 10 years ago, we started giving away these plaques. Let me show you one. We started giving away these Joe Mann's Black Wall Street Awards, these plaques.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is incredible.
We've given away we've recognized nearly 1,800 people in that 10 years. We started here in Baltimore. It expanded to, actually the first one was in DC. We've done New York and Atlanta more than anything. Our first one in New York was at the United Nations.
Wow. Wow.
Up and down the East Coast, and we were making our way westward. But we wanted to celebrate entrepreneurship in our communities. Also, I came up with this. I am Black Wall Street.
Oh, that's beautiful.
This came out 10 years ago. It's a short read, 98 pages.
I gotta have a copy.
And I look at how those people got to Oklahoma. How they, the story included Florida and Kansas. Down in Florida, you had Chief John Horse. He was a Black Seminole. He was the first great leader to make it, Black leader to go to Oklahoma, and he was not a slave. Wow. He was a freeman. He fought in the Second Seminole War, and that's where it had been started by Andrew Jackson. Florida was a freedom colony.
Absolutely.
Up until 1831. If you escaped Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, you made it to Florida, and they accepted you were in a freedom colony.
Absolutely. That's why he went to war with them.
Yeah. And then another hero in this book from Kansas, in Kansas, was Captain John Brown. Captain John Brown was an abolitionist, white boy, white man, noble white man. And he was busting caps in the slavers. Because every time a state went to enter the Union, they had to choose whether they were going to be a slave state or a free state. So he made Kansas very popular for Blacks fleeing the Deep South, trying to get away from, some of the brutality that people had been enduring in the Deep South. So those are two heroes in this book. Also, they were Black, as you mentioned, Black business districts everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere we were, somebody was hustling. Somebody was selling, no pun intended, somebody was selling some bean pies and some newspapers, brother. Somebody somewhere was selling it.
That's right. That's right.
And you mentioned HBCUs. Also, big ups to the Black newspapers. Going back, like in Baltimore, we had the Afro there, over 120 plus years old. Chicago, they had Abbott Senstack, the man with the Chicago Defender.
Right.
I think he was of the B'nai B'rith faith, but wealthy black man. A black newspaper was the mark that something was happening, that black people had it going
Revolutionary.
on.
That's right. That's so correct. And you know, it's so interesting that you bring up Florida. And you have to forgive me, Brother Donnie, because I can get all over the place. But I mean, you said so much, and I'm sort of a history buff. And I when you mentioned Florida and why President Andrew went to war with them, they've never wanted us to reap the benefits of our labor. That's deep. When somebody wants you to work, but don't want you to reap the benefit of your labor, which absolutely would justify somebody being lazy. But the truth of the matter is, the people who built the quote unquote Black Wall Street in Oklahoma had already built one in Florida. It is the nature of the Black man to be responsible. And it's very important when we mention Seminole that we understand that those Seminoles look like me and you, Brother Donnie. They were Black. And they came over and they were building things in Florida. And that's the reason why they already had a knowledge of how to do it when they got to Oklahoma. Wherever Black people have gone, when left to themselves, they have built Black business districts. You have to know that we are capable of doing it if we don't have the idea inserted into us by somebody else that we need other people to do it for us. The problem was not that. We never marched for so-called integration. We marched down south, and my grandfather and family, we'll get into this a little bit, was part of all of the movements. They were marching for economic equality. We didn't want to pay taxes and then receive books, hand-me-down books when we were paying taxes to the US government. We believe that our ditches should be clean, and the Public Works Department should clean our ditches since we paid tax down south, the same way you clean white people's. That you should pick up our sanitation and our trash and our debris the same way you pick up white people's sanitation and debris. Quiet as it's kept, many Black people down south were not just marching to back doors. They were building their own businesses, and that's where the thought and the idea of you being a uppity Negro, and they'd say that other word, came from, because we wouldn't go to their businesses. We built our own, and we had limited contact with white folk. So the smart, intelligent, shrewd Caucasians, particularly in California and upstate up there in Baltimore, where you're from, came up with this idea, and they met in California, not in the South. They met in California to come up with this socially engineering us into this idea of integration. That idea killed the Black Baseball League when they put Jackie Robinson in there. And we forgot about that we owned a whole league, the Negro Baseball League. It killed Black entertainment, because when you became a crossover artist, see, many of the artists didn't even want to go and entertain white people. They didn't, because they had to go through the back doors. White people were coming to our establishment. I asked a brother yesterday, I said, if Southern University, because we just finished the Bayou Classic, like a Bayou Classic in New Orleans is like a big old Black family reunion. And I mean, if Southern would have played LSU 50 or 60 years ago, we'd have beat all the socks off of them. Because all of the Black talent was in the historically Black college scene. And this is real interesting. But we're coming out of it now, so we see what we have to do. We have to build Black business districts. Amos Wilson said something, and I was reading it, and it stuck with me. He said the number one way to build Black loyalty is to employ one another. Can I say that again? The number one way to build Black loyalty is to employ one another. And so when I own a business and all of my employees are Black, the little brother who get out of jail and can't get a job, well, I give him a job. But the thing of it is that when you're a Black business owner, you're more than just an employer. You're a mentor. You're someone who teaches and trains not just the skilled trade, but you teach and train them how to be a functional man, upstanding man in the community. Why it's important to be a family man. Marriage is a business. See, that's the original business. You teach all of that under the guise of running a business. So at the New Black Wall Street, Mr. Bill Allen, he has it set up in a way that you can't put a business there without going through customer service. See? And the first time you treat somebody bad, you get a stern warning. And they're going to send the people to warn you.
Through customer service training.
Right. And the next time you treat somebody bad,
you got to go.
You're out.
Yeah.
We have to get used to treating each other with respect. And this is the minister's way. This is decent Black people's way. We got to get out of being so disrespectful to people or thinking that somebody's obligated to do business with us just because we got the same color. You know, in the nation, we're taught that Black is color consciousness and a connection to our Creator, and that good manners protect good morals. See, we have to become more mannerable, and this is what they're encouraging at the New Black Wall Street market. What made the Million Man March extra successful is that we were so courteous and so respectful to each other as brothers. It didn't matter if you were a Crip or Blood or GD or a Four Corner Hustler or a Baptist or a Methodist or Episcopalian Catholic from the South or East or West. We practiced good manners with each other. And it was a peaceful day. And the minister called it a glimpse of heaven. Well, now we got to go back to our communities. Why? Somebody told me, and I by trade, I'm a land developer, and I build streets and roads. And one of my buddies was saying how I need to do all of these housing developments, because you can make a lot of money off of housing developments. You can always make a lot of money off of people's ignorance, Brother Donnie, but it always backfires on you. I said, we don't need to build housing first. You build businesses first. And there's a reason for that. You build the business district first, and then around the business district comes your housing and whatnot. Because what good is it to build houses if the people are not employed anywhere? They don't have a way to pay for the houses. But if you're just greed driven, you don't care if people have a way to pay for houses. You see what I'm saying?
Or you expect them to get their money elsewhere outside of the community, or you program them to work elsewhere to come back home.
Absolutely. Now, y'all have a giant up there. I got to say something because you're from Baltimore, and I've been studying this man's philosophy for years, and I just love him. I wish God would have blessed me to meet him. He didn't, but I met you, and I know you know something about Mr. Pyron Mitchell.
Pyron J.
That man helped to create the so-called 8A program, the so-called DBE program, the so-called business enterprise, which they tricked us again, and they're not calling it Black enterprises, they're calling it DBE, or disadvantaged businesses. That's real slick. That's real slick, because what it does is
takes Black out of it.
Sir?
Takes Black out of it.
It takes Black out of it.
Yeah.
It takes Black out of it. Yeah. And it allows Caucasian females who were 40% slave owners.
Yeah.
40% of the slaves were owned by Caucasian females.
We have a Baltimore business listed as a MBE, minority business enterprise, and they're Portuguese.
That's right.
Slave owners. Right. Slave owners.
Slave owners. And so what you do is, in every city, only about 1 to 3% of the so-called DBE works actually go to black companies.
Black city, black mayor, 2%.
Right.
New York, Baltimore.
Right.
It's across the country. It pardon the language, urinates on the legacy that Parent J. Mitchell started.
It does. And most of your black politicians
don't even know it.
That are disconnected. That's why I say you got to have the black politician, activists, the economic activists, and the social activists in one room together, so that we can share intelligence. See, if you're a politician, you can't write a black agenda without a social arm.
No.
You can't, because you don't know the history. And if you don't know the history, you don't even know the purpose of what these people were doing for us. So you lose the purpose, shift the agenda by changing the name from black to disadvantage. See, black and disadvantage ain't synonymous.
Yeah.
That's the reason why it's real important to call it the new Black Wall Street market. At first, it was going to be called just New Wall Street market, but no, it's the new Black Wall Street market. When you're stripped of identity, you don't have a purpose. They neutralize you. You have no power. If we have, and the people who know about the 8A program or the DBE program, they don't usually share that intelligence with the little businessman who don't know. So all of us have to become a word that I quote, as social entrepreneurs. We can't just be social activists. We can't just be economic activists. We can't just be talking about we need to vote. We have to become social entrepreneurs and see the big picture. And it starts with a black business district. How do you recycle the black dollar? Can you recycle the black dollar realistically if all of the black businesses are spread out to where you got to travel 10 miles to get ice cream, black business, 10 miles to get a haircut, black business, 10 miles to get a coffee shop? Well, it's not feasible. It's smarter to create a black business district. That way you have, I noticed that the Greeks have Greek Town. The Chinese have, and they're in every city where they are, a number of them. You have Chinatown, all right? You Little Havana, you know? Well, why does it have to be hate if I say we need a new black business district? And what can the common politician do to aid that? I see a lot that he could do. Number one, you can make us tax exempt. Why not? Number two, whenever we start building a historically black business district, rebuilding what you tore down through urban renewal policies and so-called integration and this fake I have a dream business. Well, what you can do is, if I put up $10, match me. For whatever real estate we deem, and we carve out an area and make that area the black business district, but it has to be called black. We need that in order to employ our young people. Our young people are not disrespectful, really. They're disconnected. How do you justify your time on this planet and you don't own anything that your children can inherit? Well, we don't own nothing. And that's a sin. God don't create nothing without aim and purpose. What is our purpose for being here if we can't even leave anything to our children and grandchildren? What good is it to live and we can't leave nothing? And how can we recycle the black dollar under some so-called integration? Are you hating white people? Are Greeks hating white people if they set up Greek Town? Are Chinese hating white people if they set up Chinatown? They got plenty of black people. White folk can come to a black business district. You always came to a black business district. You came to look at our entertainment that you didn't control at that time. You took control of black entertainment by killing the so-called chitlin circuit. If we don't own a building, then you can tell us that Farrakhan can't come into Jacob Javits Center because we don't own it. So we have to get, and this is the motto and the theme of Mr. Bill Allen: ownership, ownership, ownership. Our rappers, and you have to forgive me for being so passionate, Brother Donnie. I'm sorry. But
no apology necessary.
I mean, man, when you start thinking about the game that's been run on us, man, we want to recycle the black dollar. You can't recycle the black dollar without having a black business district. And we have to create an online presence to where people can purchase online. I was thinking to myself, and I just did a little quick number, but when the minister called for 1 million and 2 million black men showed up.
Before social media.
Before social media. See, God was using him to show us something.
An example.
It's something the Million Man March should be studied, because the minister, and I went to a lot of those cities, went city to city talking to men. And the men responded. He didn't pay their way to Washington, D.C. We got there from the South, man. In fact, we had busloads come out of Louisiana. David Banner was the SGA president, David Banner, the rapper, at Southern University. And we had busloads of children, young people coming. When I went to the new Black Wall Street market, it felt like I walked through a time capsule, and it was a day after the Million Man March, because the energy and the peace was so high, and black folks were so eager to spend with black people. But it has to be highlighted. Now listen to this. What if 1 million, we got 40, some people say 50, 60 million black folk in America. Well, what if just 1 million on the lowest of the lowest end spent $100 in the new Black Wall Street market annually? Now that's not even big. That's annually.
One pair of shoes.
Just annually.
One coat.
You know how much money that is, Brother Donnie? That's $100 million. What if they spent 200, 300, 350, like Jay Morrison said? Do you know the economic impact now? The social activists and the political activists has to push what the economic activist is proposing. It's like fighting. You're using your jab to set up what you really want to do in the economics, this thing with power, but they all work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called to his purpose.
Or as they say in the streets, everybody's staying in their lane.
Everybody's staying in their lane, but everybody pushing in their lane. No idleness. Idleness is the worst thing that we could ever do, is be idle. That's the original sin. Not being with a woman. God didn't intend for us to be idle in a universe full of motion. And the man is the one to move first, not the woman. We love our women, but the person to move first is the man. All right, we got 100 million, and we got the social activists and the political activists talking together. The media, the black media, has to write and talk about our victories. Who wants to go home and tell their children every day how they got their behind kicked and celebrate the kicking of our behind? Every time black men win, it should be highlighted, and our women should be screaming to the top of their voice for the kind of men we are and what we built for them. Somebody's telling me some bad stuff about black men. I asked the question. I said, you heard about Black Wall Street over 100 years ago? And men ain't this and men. I say, who built it? Black men built it for black women and black children. We need to highlight that.
A lot of them were soldiers. Every time there was a war,
that's right.
It was the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, every time that black man, that black veteran came home, his back was a little straighter.
That's right.
His chin was a little stiffer. His grip was a little firmer.
That's right.
He could look that person in the eye, where before he might have had his head down or what have you.
That's right.
He comes back reaffirmed, and so the real fight was when they came back home.
That's
but those
right.
were the men that established black towns.
That's right.
Mound Bayou, Mississippi.
Amen. Teach on it, brother.
Oklahoma had over 80 black towns.
That's right.
East Texas had over 500 black towns.
That's right.
Florida, they had a place called Negro Fort in Florida.
Sure did.
If you made it to
One in
Florida
New Orleans
and
too.
agreed to Catholicism and the fight for the militia, you were granted your freedom up until 1831. And that's when that Andrew Jackson called himself
and Haiti.
Black. Yeah. Oh, Haiti, Tucson,
and
Nova
Nat
Shore,
Turner
out there, Venezuela, Jamaica.
That's right.
The greatest victory in the Western Hemisphere. That's why we'll never hear anything good about it from mainstream media.
That's right.
Haiti, Christophe, Toussaint Louverture,
Jack Dessalines.
Bad boy, built the Citadel. That Citadel is a monstrous castle, fort.
That's right.
And all you hear is bad stuff about Haiti. That's because they kicked Napoleon in the hind parts.
That's right.
They kicked him all the way back to France.
And you know, the power of black women, because it was Cecilia Fatima who summons John Jack Dessalines, Toussaint, and all of them to come deep down in the swamps.
What's her name?
Cecilia Fatima. She was a black woman. And sometimes as black men, our egos are so big until we won't get together. But when that black woman called them, they went down in the alligator-infested swamp and they had a meeting. And they decided to do something for themselves by way of responsibility. See, it's very dangerous when somebody makes you work and you can't reap the benefits of your work. That's an evil thing to do, to make somebody into a slave to where they work and get nothing. Cecilia Fatima was a revolutionary, and women in general. If our women talked about our victories and sung our praise the way the Bible said they sung David and Solomon and Saul's praise, then it would shift the little boy's consciousness to turn away from the enemy and turn back to their fathers. I bring the Bible up, but in the Bible, in the book of Malachi, it says that Elijah would turn the hearts of the children to their fathers. And who were their fathers? Their fathers were builders. Their fathers were conquerors. Their fathers built a world for their mothers. And an appreciative, beautiful black woman like Cecilia Fatima or a modern day Ava Muhammad are the kind of women that remember what the purpose of men is and what we are supposed to be about. If we are successful with the new Black Wall Street market, and it's marketed properly, black men's competitive nature can be used in a very positive way to where we can go into our own respective cities and begin to rebuild our black business districts. We can come, and Mr. Bill Allen has it set up in a way that not only can you have a tour, but you can receive training on how to set up a Black Wall Street or Black business district. In fact, we're bringing a delegation from Louisiana to Georgia. And this is what our Black politicians, Black movers and shakers from Louisiana, it's just an exciting time to go do something for self. You bring a delegation.
I got to get you to talk a bit about Louisiana. In this book, one of the people who inspired Tulsa's Black Wall Street came out of Louisiana. Now, his name escapes me for a minute, but he was into immigration. He was one of the people where they wanted to send Blacks from America, from Louisiana, back to Africa. Right. And he linked up with a cat from Tennessee named Pap Singleton, who initially was helping to send Blacks to Liberia, but then he looked to Kansas. Before they went to Oklahoma, they went to Kansas. Kansas got super saturated, and that was like the second wave of Black people down into Oklahoma. But in reading about Louisiana and what a lot of us don't know, one thing I learned in researching the book was about that Louisiana Purchase. When I visited New Orleans, I realized how, we know so much of what we know of American history is through British eyes. We don't realize in the rest of the country what you see on a daily, the influence of France, the influence of Spain. And lastly, when that Louisiana Purchase happened, 2/3 of America, the other 2/3 was added on. So prior to that, America was just an eastern slither.
That's right. That's right.
And I think New Orleans had more Black millionaires than anywhere else. And it had a lot to do too. When you have the British laws and the French laws and the Spanish laws, it's a little more wide open, as opposed to, say, some of the New England colonies might have just been the Puritans, whatever. They just that English, that British mentality. It was more wide open down in New Orleans. And then you also had some mean slave insurrections down there.
The largest one in the country took place here.
Yeah, that one right there.
Yes, sir. Something that we should always take note of, because history has a funny way of repeating itself. The Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, where did he have his most chapters at?
Ooh. I'm not going to guess. You tell me.
Louisiana, over 400.
Now, I'm thinking globally. Louisiana had the most.
Louisiana had the most.
Big port city, international city.
And the culture in Louisiana is like gumbo. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of everything all mixed together. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are people, one of the greatest overlooked historical facts is that a lot of people who lived in Mississippi and Louisiana, they never fled to the north. They fled south of the border. Like on my mother's side, they're from Cuba. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Black people from Louisiana went down to Veracruz,
Mexico.
And that's why when you get down to Veracruz, you start seeing the old Mech. Yeah. You see the big head.
Yeah.
And if you go to
lips, nose.
Yeah, culturally speaking, each part of Louisiana, even to this very day, is different. New Orleans is very different than Baton Rouge, even though I can drive 45 minutes from my office and I'm in New Orleans, but it's different from Baton Rouge. Mm-hmm. When you start moving out to Lafayette, Opelousas, Lafayette is different than New Orleans and Baton Rouge. So you had pockets of Louisiana where the people were not enslaved. Mm-hmm. I mentioned the swamp in Cecilia Fatima. And if you ever seen any video of me, I always say land literacy for all the land illiterates. the people in Louisiana were highly land literate people. Mm-hmm. See, in the nation, we always talk about purchasing and getting land, getting land, getting land. And I asked one of the brothers one day, I said, what's more important than land? And he didn't say nothing. I said, man. In the Bible, it says, and there was no man to till the earth. Mm-hmm. So if you get land and you're land illiterate, then the land can become a liability. So you have to have a comprehensive knowledge as to what to do with land in order to make the land productive and produce for you. And it goes way beyond just getting food out of the land. So when they went to Oklahoma, the people who went to Oklahoma from Louisiana, from Florida, from different parts, those men and women too, but especially the men, were highly land literate. Mm-hmm. Now, I in my day-to-day look at land every day, but let me give you an example. My great-grandfather, he could look at the land and he was so highly land literate until he could tell you the best place to dig a well, the best place to fish, the best place to hunt. All of this stuff here is part of land assessment. So you didn't, you know how they talk in the Bible about how they went and spied the land? Yeah. They're doing a land assessment. Yeah. And they know how far it is from the sea or and so forth, so that they can get resources, so that they can set up an economy. Mm-hmm. In Stonecrest, Georgia, it's not just a Black business. It's an economic ecosystem. Mm-hmm. We have to get to the point to where when we go someplace, we're not there just to set up a business. We're there to set up a system, because inside of our system is where our power lies. The Louisiana people were given the opportunity here in Louisiana, because they got some places in Louisiana, white folk will just let you just go and be to yourself and leave you alone. They don't necessarily, you know, and I guess it's like that kind of, but in Louisiana, it's a little different, because you could really just go set up your own community and do your own thing. And the only time it became a problem is when the middlemen, some call them carpetbaggers, they got a little red book in the Nation of Islam where we read a lot about them. Mm-hmm. When they come in, they want the resources, so they start pitting the average white person against the average Black person. Mm-hmm. The average Caucasian is just somewhere trying to survive. Mm-hmm. And they will leave you alone until this certain class of leadership comes in and starts using techniques to make one person fight the other one.
Divide and conquer. I got to steal you for a minute. We've talked about a lot of things, but there's a very important element there, New Orleans, I need you to touch. The indigenous. We were here.
Absolutely. That's
before the slave ships.
Absolutely.
We were in the Caribbean. The oldest bones in South America and Brazil, a 14,000-year-old Black woman named Lucia. We've been here. Can you tell me something? Because I know you got the Black Indians and a lot of that history there, that a lot that throughout the country, it's not talked about a lot. It's oral tradition. It's almost to some it's taboo, or it was poorly handed down. But I've met so many Black people that know their grandmother told them something about some Indians.
There's a brother here named Umar Bey. He's actually my friend. He's written several books about the indigenous people here before Columbus. And that's what made it, sometimes for some of us, is very complicated for us to understand it, because in certain family lines, they were never slaves. They were never enslaved. They always had their own land. They were always doing their own thing. And another big myth is that Caucasians were going around beating up all black men. That's a myth down south. That just didn't happen. There were some places that white people were literally afraid to come. They just didn't go.
$5 Indians.
That's right. Dr. Claude Anderson talks about that a lot. And the thing about it is that the real indigenous people, again, Brother Donnie, they look like me and you. And they think like me and you. They never fathomed the idea of having some other group come and take complete ownership over their land, their resources, their communities, and closing their businesses down. This is the first time in history where we've been in a condition where we absolutely thought that all of our people were slaves. This is the first time in history. So we think we're advancing, but really over the last 40 years, we've gone backwards. And now I believe that this new Black Wall Street market is a light of hope and that it'll bring us ultimately out of it. I would like to say that at the new Black Wall Street market, one of the streets is called Choctaw. Choctaw. Art Gallery. A.G. Gadsden.
That's Alabama?
Yes, sir. The first Black millionaire there. Madam C.J. Walker.
Henry Adams. That's his name, from Louisiana. Henry Adams.
Yes, sir. Madam C.J. Walker. See, and this is why I'm mentioning Black media again. Our people are in an identity crisis.
Yes, sir.
You don't have a purpose without identity.
Our families are in an identity crisis.
Our families are in an identity crisis. This might sting, but they're dragging us into a sexual identity crisis.
Amen.
Now, see, people will say, oh, that's hate. It's not hate. It's the truth. We have to have clarity, clarity of function and purpose in order to have power. You can't have power if you don't know if you're black or white. You don't know where you fit. Just because you're black doesn't mean that you want to treat white people evil. And we don't even have a history of treating anybody evil. We have a history of being treated evil. Now, why are you dragging these young boys and girls into a sexual identity crisis?
Before they're even old enough to think.
How do we benefit from that?
We don't.
Do we benefit from that? Well,
no, you see, the black family, you know better than I how the black family has been under attack from our first interaction.
Right.
Whether it's castrating the male, whether it's the male not being in the house when the welfare lady come around.
That's right.
It's the destruction. That's what prison has done. That's what prison is continuing to do. Help destroy the black family. The crack epidemic destroy the black family. All of this, the black family. That's what was and still is under attack.
The little brother in Chicago or New York, it don't matter which city, California, Louisiana, that's running around shooting and killing each other. The real question is, why is he doing that? He's doing it because he don't have an identity.
Yeah.
Identity is where we begin. And that's the reason why we can't take black out of it. We cannot do that. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and for those who are members of the Nation of Islam, the first thing you have to do is write a letter. And that letter is all about identity. Identity is what gives you your power. If you are a married woman, you take the man's name because you're going to work in his system. And marriage is a busyness. Having a family, This is all part of the new Black Wall Street market. These are family people. Allens are a family. We've been a family. And the thing about it is that as we highlight our victories, many other Black families will see the importance of family and extended family. And really, that's all that the minister and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad were trying to get us to see, is that we're family, Brother Donnie. And the more we push family, the more successful we'll be in our busyness. I don't think of it as just a busyness. I think of it as a beehive. And the beehive has many businesses or busy bees working together, all together under one roof. And the good thing about a beehive is, and you see the banner in the back, you see the FOI on the Resurrect Black Wall Street banner. The good thing about a beehive is its purpose is to create honey that heals us and heals humanity. But there's also another component to a beehive. When you see, I grew up down south. You can take a bee and go over to a flower with a jar, and you can easily put that bee inside of a jar and put the lid on it. I used to catch bees all day. It was something fun we do down south. But you know what you don't do? You don't stick your finger up in a beehive, because the one you touch is not the only one that's going to sting you. Every bee in that beehive jumps on top of you and goes to stinging you. Over here in Louisiana, we have a street called 72nd Street. And before integration, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey had some chapters over in that area too. And if the white police were chasing a Black man, when he made it to 72nd Avenue, they stopped chasing him, because they knew if they went inside of that beehive there, Lord help them, because all the Black bees are going to come out and sting them. So we got to get back to building our beehive. And just
Brother Lewis, when I first invited you on, I was captured by your enthusiasm about Black Wall Street there in Stonecrest, Georgia. And you told me how you knew Mr. Allen and how you had been there. And, I wasn't expecting much more than just to talk about Black Wall Street. But now I realize I've been set up. Now, clearly you do more than just, it's almost like you have, you do. You have an army behind you. You got like a media empire. I mean, you're not just Brother Lewis from the South. No, you Brother Lewis with the army from the South and the North and the East and the West.
Brother Donnie,
and I'll give you a couple minutes to say some final thoughts there.
I recognize and really believe in the power of the ancestors, and I believe that I represent my grandfather. And I believe that the time has come for us to really build our nation and build up our communities. And I want to be a part of that. And I want to see how many people we can bring together to be part of the beehive. I think about this movement and about us rebuilding our community every day. I cannot wait to meet you face to face and hope that you'll come down to Georgia, because I want us to do some filming, and I want all of Black America to know that we can rebuild our communities. I work on the construction side of it and the infrastructure side of it, but I've been working with young Black boys, 7 to 17, teaching them the trades. And I really believe that those little Black boys are going to come out soon to be our saving grace, to make a better community and to give them something to do to channel all of that energy that we can all be proud of. Like I said before, I don't meet black boys who are just disrespectful. I meet black boys who are disconnected from the beehive. Quick story, short story, but Mr. Bill Allen is my cousin, and the family came out of Mississippi in around 1913. We owned about almost 600 acres of land, and some whites were coming to take the land, and two whites wind up dying, fighting over the land. And the family wind up getting split up because some of the Allens had to leave Mississippi in the night. You know what I mean?
I do.
But look at how God is making it. Mr. Bill Allen, we're rebuilding. The Allens are being used by God. It ain't on us, but God is using us to push the rest of the country to rebuild these black business districts. I'm part of now. We have the one in Stonecrest, Georgia, but we hope to be announcing the opening of the one in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is 51,000 square feet of commercial and residential space. And we're on our way back, Black America, to doing something great for ourselves. I really want to get with you, Brother Donnie. I want you to come to Georgia, and I really want you to come to Baton Rouge, and I want you to go to Muhammad's farm, because we got to start getting into
back to the farm.
Food, clothing, and shelter should be the focus of our religious expression.
COVID should have taught us that, especially on the farms.
That's right. Food, clothing, and shelter should be the pillar of the black man's religion. We shouldn't talk about people who we believe in more than food, clothing, and shelter. Because if we really believed in them, we would provide food, clothing, and shelter for ourselves in the name of the God that we believed in. So I don't debate. We got this saying, we don't beef down south, we build. We don't want to debate about religion. We want to focus these little black boys on food, clothing, and shelter. And whatever other little differences we have, we believe God will work those things out for us, Brother Don.
I'll be in Georgia and Louisiana sooner than you know. We've done the awards in Atlanta. We got to go to Stonecrest some kind of way. I'm going
to make sure that happens.
We're going to bring and then New Orleans. I have a brother from another mother who's opening a restaurant there. And I have to go and see it. He's built it in the middle of COVID. Ain't God good? People
all the time
in the middle while others are dying. We're building.
That's right. That's right. And so, God don't always do something to you. Sometimes what he's doing to you is for you. Think about this. 100 years ago, they burnt down Black Wall Street, the motto. And 100 years later, we're rebuilding it, but it won't be the last one. God wants us to have a motto. The minister never told us to worship him. He's our motto. He's showing us what a man look like so that we can become men. We're going to bring the fish program back. You heard it from Louis Ali from the South.
The fish program?
Mr. Muhammad's fish program. Elijah Muhammad, we have to prove he lives. Yeah, we're going to bring it back. God is working on that right now. We're going to bring back all of our programs, brother. Brother Donnie, you watch and see, brother.
I believe you.
Yes, sir.
I believe you. I want to thank you and your team. I now realize how busy a schedule you are. Come on now, let me in. You speak all over the country. Come on, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, brother.
Well, thank you for gracing us. We feel real. I know it. I can tell. People, we're grateful that you took the time.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you. Skills pay the bills. Land literacy for all the land illiterates. Yes, God bless you, brother.
May peace be unto you. Thank you. Have a good day. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. for Black USA BlackUSA.News Morning Show. Have a happy Sunday, everyone.
You too, sir.